Okay. Hello to you all. Please join palms and bow. Recitation of the four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Welcome to you all again. And we're going to continue on with right view. And try to get you to approach this from a different point of view, which is kind of not really a point of view. And I was kind of realizing as I started talking about it, the limitation of language to try to talk about right view, which is not a view, or we could say a different view, but it is just the thusness of mind. And when we do that, that's even too much, because then we would have to presuppose there is something called mind, but it isn't in this way. I'm going to take you, let's say, outside of samsara a bit, at least to show you where the door is. It's not easy. It's not something that I can really accomplish with you, but at least I can present it in a way where in samsara itself that you can practice in the correct way, that you understand what is clear and what is an obstruction. So this right view, what is it? It's not a philosophical, conceptual view or a belief system. It isn't something saying, I believe in naturalism and everything is connected in this way. I believe in the sun god. And I'm using things so other religions may not take offense to what I'm saying. So if you worship the sun god, I'm sorry. But I'm using this and saying it isn't in this way. It's not like you're a Buddha. You believe in the Buddha. Yes and no. Buddha is a way of saying that this is right view or the thusness, but it isn't something that we see as a fixed description of some kind of omnipotent God that's there that we aspire to be with. It isn't in this way. And I'm really going to take this and deconstruct, and what some of the philosophers say, de-reify your conceptions about what mind is and about what the practice is and about who you are. And that's the biggest problem. And that's where all the Tathagata Garbha Sutras are pointing to, and the ones before it as well. All the Mahayana Sutras are pointing and saying, better take a look and see who you are. Try to establish that. And in doing this, we have to look carefully. A belief system presupposes that there's an existence of an established reality. Means that there's something there that is real. Look around your room. Look around. Think about all the places that you went to today. Do they fit that description? Or if you came back in 100 years, would it look like it looks like now? No, it will not. Nor would you. At that point, you'd probably be an abomination, being so old and still alive. But you certainly aren't going to look like you look right now. But we understand that, the chances of you being here in 100 years is highly unlikely. So this body cannot serve to be the vessel to transport you anywhere. And you go to an ice cream store. I'm sure all of you have gone to an ice cream store. If you haven't, please let me know and I'll ship you some ice cream or whatever. But you've gone to an ice cream store and you're looking there and you're seeing what's there. Think in your mind, like, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream, right? And you go, oh, I think I'll have the burgundy cherry. No, maybe the pistachio. Rocky Road would be good. Not bad. No, I changed my mind. I don't want that many calories. I'm going to have a raspberry sorbet. Now, one thing I know for sure is that that by now you've already began to salivate. But the thing is that have you ever changed your mind when you're standing in line to buy an ice cream and bought a different flavor because you saw that and said, no, I changed my mind? Everybody does it, right? Unless maybe you're my dad. My dad would always buy vanilla ice cream. So there's a few out there like that. But the idea here, my point is this: if that was truly your mind that you're changing, you would never be able to change it. It would always have to be vanilla or Rocky Road or whatever. But you change your mind. So not only is it that from the environment that is constantly changing, but what you believe to be you is constantly changing. Because perhaps one day you get a vanilla and you get sick on it. You don't want to have it anymore. How could you do that if you can't change your mind? But everything is in this way. The thing that we do that makes a big mistake in our practice is that we can go around and say, okay, you don't exist and you don't exist and you're an illusion, you're a dream and whatever. Only I exist. And that's what we do with the practice. It's nonsense. We don't get it. We don't get it. We're constantly trying to win the ultimate beauty pageant of being a perfect bodhisattva and trying to change ourselves to be a bodhisattva. And if you run into a working bodhisattva and they'd look at you and they'd go, who are you? I'm a bodhisattva. And they go, you don't smell like a bodhisattva. You don't look like one. What does a bodhisattva do? If you know a bodhisattva, then you'd know what a bodhisattva would look like. But it wouldn't look like your corporal body. So we have to start from this de-reification of everything that we think is real, everything that we think is so important in this world. When you're walking around in a dream and somebody insults you in the dream, that's important. You want to go and correct that person, or somebody's chasing you, you certainly want to not get caught. But is that real? It is a dream having a dream. We don't know that. We can't understand that. But if we don't know that, then we don't know right view. We're just playing at the practice. People say, Gilbert, don't present it so deep. Why not? This is what's important. Whether you're an experienced practitioner or a beginning practitioner, this is something that we can look into, to try to see clearly, to see, all right, let's start with this premise, which is that there's no premises. There's no foundation philosophically for us to establish a philosophical belief system. because everything that we look around, everything that we touch is mutable. It's changeable. We don't understand that, which is very quizzical, because the very mind that you're using created everything. And you go, I created all of this? No, 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 no. I can get out of it. No, you can't get out. What do you mean? That is where the distinction is that the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism, the fundamental teachings are the single vehicle of one mind. When we understand there's just one mind, not your mind and your mind and your mind and your mind, just one mind, to the extent that because there's only one mind, even the one has to return to mind. And if the one returns to mind, it's empty. We don't understand that. But we have to try. We have to keep slapping ourselves and say, wake up, wake up. Try to wake up. Try to wake up. Don't keep falling back into the dream. Some of you may still be chasing after that ice cream that I was talking about. Others are there going, wait a second, this is kind of interesting. I don't understand it. It's okay. I don't intend for you to understand everything. That's not the point of the right viewpoint, is to be able to approach all appearances in a way in which we are clear what those appearances represent. So to believe in a certain reality as it being real, we have to establish that it's permanent. It cannot be a reality that's impermanent. Think about that. So what is it that is immutable, that doesn't change? Not you. I can see a few of you got extra lines on your eyes and put on a few pounds and whatever, lost a bit of hair. Okay. So it can be you. Yes, it is. Huh? But not your body. It's what moves the body around. How can it move things around? How could it not? It created the environment. It created the body. How could it not do this? The magic is not in the mind. The magic is in the illusion, like some masterful magician creating the illusion that you are real. Are you? And you say yes and no. No to the you. But that which is listening, using their consciousness, is mind. Stay with me, because I'm taking you through very, very slowly with this. If you do this, then you understand what you're doing. When you sit to meditate, you're not going to be waiting for something to arrive or to come in or to have some kind of an experience. What do you want? It's there already. You don't understand that. So you sit there and wallow in your misery of your leg pain, your back pain, too hot, too cold, too loud, whatever it is, too long. And all you're doing is just experiencing the dream. And what you don't understand is that you, that which experiences the dream, is a dream. When there is a revelation that there is no person sitting, no physical person, no person by your name that's there, the dream is seen clearly. The pain is gone because there is not a person there to receive the pain. That's just causes and conditions. Doesn't mean that someone is immune from that. And it just means that it's seen clearly and gives people faith that this is an illusion. And in this world, mind can bend that illusion, twist it, change it, because it's changeable. And so you have pain one moment, the next moment you don't have pain. Why? Because everything's created by the mind. And if everything's created by the mind can simply say, you don't have the pain. But if you're sitting there going, I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to feel the pain. Have you ever sat and meditated that way? I'm sure some of you have sat and went, I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to feel the pain. No. That's not going to work. That's not right view. Right view is simply sitting, and there is a self-absorption that happens. The idea of an ego or an individual is absorbed by the mind. And in this absorption, mind is returned to its own self-nature. We are just a conjurer's trick in a dream in mind. Believe me, or don't believe me, believe mine, that all of this is an illusion. We don't understand that because we go, I knock on this desk and most certainly it's there, but it's a dream. Have you ever had a dream? I'm sure you probably told people that dream was like so real. It was so real, right? Why don't you say it about this one? Because we've got stuck in a habitual pattern of this. Now, Nagarjuna, from around the 2nd century, was a philosopher, you could call him extraordinaire. And he challenged the validity of all conceptual thinking. Very similar to the Tathagata Sutras challenging conditioned existence and saying, are they real or not? Of course, we know Nagarjuna had two truths, the apparent reality and absolute reality. The apparent reality can only appear by virtue of its connection with the absolute reality, but the reality of all of that is ultimately everything is created by the mind. So those appearances cannot be said to be outside of mind, because how could they be outside of mind? When you dream, are you outside of mind when you dream? It's part of it, because that when you wake up, you go, I had such a weird dream last night. I had such a weird dream. And I'd say, weirder than the one you're doing now? But I really want you to hang in there with me. We're moving through this really, really slow. But looking and saying, this world as we see it is a dream. Now, something very interesting about Nagarjuna, in which some modern day philosophers or historians and scholars misunderstand about him. And that's that, I think I might have mentioned a little bit last week, he uses a system of negating what people are basing their system of belief on, and their system of what they think to be reality. And this was a very popular system of debating. But what he was doing was creating this invitation for you to practice. If not this, then what? You've heard me always say, what is the question? That in itself is not a question, it is a statement. What is the question that you should be asking? What is this? What? Until it's exhausted. What Nagarjuna was doing was saying, we cannot truly establish time. We cannot truly establish a location of anything. It is why some of the sutras, and I've talked about them before, talk about Manjusri and where Manjusri abides. And where does Manjusri abide? Just mind. Where is that? Where is it not? We don't understand that because our system of cognition is incapable of knowing and functioning like the Buddha mind. We can only know and function in accordance with the appearances and the laws that appear, the physical properties, physical laws that appear in this world. That cannot bring us to any kind of a realization because we're just looking around. But we don't understand that. We have to say, if this is not reality, what is it? What is beyond this moment? And we then begin to mess it all up, because then we begin to look at things outside of samsara. Samsara is within mind, but what we try to do is conjure up some idealistic way of looking at things and use our conceptual thinking to imagine what that is. This again is a fatal mistake, because the best that we can do is have a book learning about how to do something, but we have not experienced it. Right view meditation is the process of experiencing mind. Shifu used to say, it's like peeling an onion. You take an onion and you just keep peeling it and peeling it and peeling it. Oh, this layer comes off, and this layer comes off, and this layer comes off, and this layer comes off. And there's nothing more inside of samsara. Yet, something is left. That something is mind. So when we sit, it's just like peeling this onion. We just let go of this thought and this thought and this thought. We don't have to rip them off. We just stay in the present moment. We're just very comfortably sitting in the present moment, doing nothing. Mind is there. We don't have to worry about it. And sometimes your mind will be very, very clever. It's going, oh, you're so relaxed. Oh my gosh, you're so relaxed. Wow, everything's going to, and then you fall asleep. So your mind tricks you into doing that. Relaxation has nothing to do with sleep. Of course, you need relaxation to sleep, but you also need relaxation in the present moment. So you should be relaxed all the time. And this is right view practice, to stay relaxed, to stay aware, being aware in the present moment. Awareness has nothing to do with self. It knows that Gilbert is here and people are there and people are making points or whatever. It's aware of that. But it's an individual, not a life and being, not an ego that's directing this. When you do this right, then it's like what Huineng says, you're walking, talking, sleeping, eating, and Chan. All the time you're eating, you're doing things in Chan. It's just this way. Just like Shifu said, you just rest in the present moment. Tibetans say rest in Rigpa, rest in the clarity of the mind. Not bad. It's all connected. So what Nagarjuna did was he was saying this philosophy and this philosophy and this and this and this and this is all predicated on that these assumptions of the reality of these points. But if these points cannot be established precisely through argument, through logic, devoid of just raw faith, then it cannot be established as a true faith system. I could say, I now have changed my system and I now am worshiping a yellow highlighter. And it illuminates everything where I write it. It's such a wonderful thing. It illuminates it. But then I had to change because it ran out of ink. So I guess it wasn't that great of an idea. You see, it doesn't make sense. And that's what Nagarjuna said. But Nagarjuna did not replace it with another viewpoint from samsara. That is why Vilamakritti wouldn't answer what emptiness was. How could he? Anything that he would say is predicated on presenting it in a dream to dreams. It would just push everything away like a magnet. You have the magnets, and if you put them in the wrong polarity, one pushes away the other one. But it doesn't make sense. So Nagarjuna, in his invitation to practice, was putting down all of these conceptual thinking. What is there? What is the immutable part, which is always written in the sutras? You'll see it there. You know, I don't know what the word is in Chinese, but I'm sure you've run into it in Chinese as well, in Mandarin. That term, immutable, it would run in there. Anybody? Wei Shan, what's the term immutable in Chinese? As he's looking it up.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to unmute myself. Immutable, I would say 不动. unmoving, right?
Unmoving. That actually is a pretty good way of saying it, bouton. Because, thank you, Wishon. Because if you recall me, I say anything that moves is not real. So I've said that many times, and some of you picked up on that, and began to understand that anything that moves is conditioned existence. The immutability of the mind is that it is always the way it is, but it appears to move. Anything that moves is moved by the mind, not by the person or the ego. Why is it moved by the mind? Because it moves in accordance with what? Anybody know? What principle moves things? Come on, bonus points. You guys don't know this. What moves things? Sam, if he gets it, and he's like the newbie, boy, I'm knocking you all down wrong. Okay, go ahead.
Causes and conditions?
Yeah, what is that called?
Oh, Pratika Samuppada.
Look, you see? From the mouths of babes. He could be the radiant one, the radiant child. Thank you. Pratika Samuppada. It is not you that moves it. It's not that the flag moves or the wind moves. Your mind moves. Who said that? Huineng. He's our resident teacher for today. Huineng. The mind moves. But it moves in a way that there's a stillness there. But everything moves in accordance with Pratika Samuppada, causes and conditions. Can it even be said to be moving? No, not really, because it's just a dream. So if you were in your dream and you decided to move to a big palace, and you're now in the palace and you wake up, you didn't really move anywhere, did you? You go, crud. I had a jacuzzi and everything. Shucks. That was a pretty cool place. Now I'm back in my own place, sitting on my funky sofa or whatever. We see things in the right way. Again, I'm taking you through this very, very slowly, because this is it's easy to fall off and misunderstand what I'm saying. When we look at the Heart Sutra, it advanced that all is empty of any independent nature. So this is challenging the conceptual view that appearances are real, and rather all is fundamentally devoid of existence, of their own existence. So by doing this, when it challenges it and says, these things are not real, they're empty. So why are they empty? Because they have no independent self-nature. The problem with us, with this part, is that we're always looking outside and seeing things in a way that looks at the world, and we are convinced that everything is impermanent, but we don't get rid of that nasty ego. That is what the Diamond Sutra was pointing to and saying, there is no ego, no personality, or life and being. Forget about it. Just forget about it. No, you have to go walking around, prancing around, preening yourself all the time like some fancy bird. I don't do too much preening anymore. But in any case, forget about that. That is analogous to a death sentence. Comes up the word death. Yeah, you and your partners in crime are killing everybody. It's all right because you are being born again, only to die again. These little deaths, how many hundreds of thousands, millions of deaths do you want to go through? Now, before you start feeling shameful about all of that, you have to understand that in fact, none of you have died. None of you have been born. You say you want to be born again. Why? The only reason you would be born again is going back into the dream to try to pull and convince these dream occupants that they don't exist. You and this world don't exist in the manner that you believe it to be. That's not easy for us. That's scary for us. And then we're talking about death. Why do you think Shakyamuni Buddha began to practice? Because he saw old age, sickness, and death, and it scared the heck out of him. So when we look at this, we have to see in the right view. The Diamond Sutra is talking about that all the nature of phenomena is simply a phantasm, a dream, an illusion. What does that mean? It's not just fancy words, beautiful words. You have to penetrate it to really look at that. Have a conviction of at least knowing the process. You can have a book learning idea of the right view, but if you don't put it into practice, maybe next lifetime you will, but you're condemning yourself to a death sentence. It's okay because you're a dream or a phantasm or an illusion anyway, but to you, when you're dying, you're dying. You're there on the deathbed. What's going to save you then? It's better to experience a perfect death, knowing that this body is an illusion. We let go of it. Shifu used to say, you shouldn't be afraid of death. You trade in an old car and you get a new car. Pretty good deal. So he was trying to ease people into thinking in that way. And I'm trying to get you into a point of thinking, don't come back. Don't come back as a sentient being without a vow. If you have a vow, then it will work. If you can't, it will not work for you. So this idea of being a dream or an illusion, you have to contemplate that. What is contemplation? It's not cogitation. Cogitation is just thinking. Cogitation is, well, I want to think. If I do this, Gilbert said, if I contemplate, then we can do that. So let me think. Nothing exists. Okay, so what does nothing mean? And you're doing it like that. That's just a linear thinking perpetuating the self, the ego. It's there and it's keeping the ego busy, and it's validating the ego, because by doing that, the ego has some value, some intelligence to it. If only the smart people could get it, then they'd have like schools, enlightenment schools, guaranteeing you if you go through, you can do that. You can get somewhere. But it isn't in this way. Just like Master Ling Chi said, as I see it, there's not one of you that is incapable of doing this, of realizing that you already are using the minds of the Buddhas and the patriarchs. You just have to use it in the right way. Master Ling Chi said, now that you have it, when you need to use it, use it. And when you don't need to use it, don't use it. But no, we have to keep like putting it up in the air, like we're juggling tennis balls, and to create the idea of a value to the ego, to the self. We don't understand that that's what keeps us trapped in the dream. Let it go. So rational thought is just simply processing and putting in order appearances and presenting them in some kind of a soteriological or epistemological theory of knowledge. Those are fancy words, but what one of them means is it's the doctrine of salvation, and saying, how do we get out of here? And so if you attach to how to get out and trying to find the exit door, then you still die. You have to penetrate through to break the dream. And the other epistemological is the theory of knowledge. Like there's some knowledge that you can get that will give you the clue that if you do this, God will be happy with you or whatever. And so you've got a ticket to paradise. No, you got a ticket to death. That's what Nagarjuna was saying. He was saying, no matter what, these things are going to happen. And you know it. The good thing now is that you know it. What are you going to do about it? Are you just going to be like a mayfly and fly around for one day and then poop, your legs up? Because that's all we are. All of these appearances are just like mayflies. To them in their life, they think they have a full life. One day, your lifespan is no different. Why? Because it's illusory. It's impermanent. Wouldn't you want to have the permanence of mind? But if we reach for it, we can't get it. We have to stay in place. We practice, but we practice with right view, not practicing to be the perfect human being. That would be something, if you were a Confucius practitioner, would be good. Not to become immortal because you're Taoist, but to practice clearly that just this moment is the Buddha. Practicing it with sincere in your heart in this way. That's right view. The right view is that this is a burning house, that this body is a burning body. It cannot be saved. So this notion of a soteriological salvation from this world is not there. The more we think in this way, the more we become attached to this world, and we guarantee our death. Of course, we're going to be born again, but we die again and again and again. The realization that this world is a dream is liberation. We no longer think about ourselves and going, I'm clear, I made it, I'm out of here, gone. That would be an arhat. No, because a true realization is the sincerity that you see that there's people in this burning building, and even though they don't exist, the very fact that you understand that they don't exist, but yet there's a dream where they're suffering and they're dying like mayflies, born in the morning and dead at night. Wants you, begs you to take care of. How could you not? The very mind that's suffering in that dream is not separate from the mind that knows that, knows that these sentient beings or so-called sentient beings are suffering because it's a dream. It's the Buddha's dream. Outside of samsara, the Buddha knows that the dream is there. How could it not want to shake and awaken or to stop the dream? So Nagarjuna doesn't argue another viewpoint rather than a position of negation of phenomena as having some kind of independent reality. If he presented a different viewpoint, then that too could be defeated. And so he would not be different than them. That's why he kept his silence about it and just said, these are the two truths. But the truth does not lie in samsara. That is something that has to be realized. So when we abandon conceptual thinking, that is the way. Freedom from the dream. Freeing the mind breaks through the illusion of an independent reality of this world and enables the mind to fully access the potential rather than being limited by the self-nature imposed by an erroneous conceptual world. Now, let me explain what I just said. When we are no longer tied to the rules of this world as being the ultimate rules that govern, let's say, the cosmos, much less mind and its infiniteness, so we understand those rules only apply to here, not out here. When we let that go, then the mind is free to experience the infinite. Now, I'm not saying that I've experienced the entire mind. I could not say that would be foolishness. But just experiencing a little of the infinite outside of samsara to see the self-nature of mind is something that drives you back into samsara and say, hey, you got to take a look at this. What do you mean? No, you really need to take a look at this. You need to experience this. And when you begin to do that little by little, all of a sudden, these mayflies begin to pay attention and realizing they're in the afternoon of their lives. And they realize others are there and they want to help them to wake up from the dream that they're a mayfly. This is how it works. But we cannot understand it. We cannot conceive of that. Nor is there any way that anyone has even experienced just a little bit of this to explain that. That is something that has to be experienced. But that's why the sutras are there. That's why the ancient masters were talking about all of these things, all of the disciples of the Buddha, to try to awaken people. When I say awaken, is coming out of the dream, letting the mind unstick itself from the dream, not the salvation of individuals. If you're looking for salvation in Buddhism, in the way that you think that you're going to be teleported up to sitting at the right hand of the Buddha, then you probably have the wrong religion, because Buddhism isn't necessarily a religion. It's a way out of a dream. Because we attach to the dream, we cannot see the full potentiality of mind. When we begin to understand that, it is the knowing that everything is created by the mind, that gives us a pry bar to pry against things, to try to deconstruct, de-reify the idea of the world, the idea of this samsara, the idea of these physiological principles in this world. Again, right view is not a different view within samsara. It is not a correct view, but serves as a foundation upon where the mind should look to release or awaken from the dream. We do not know the dreamer and believe the dreamer is us. This is not the way, and it pulls us back into samsara. Us is the perpetuation of the false notion of a life and being seeking liberation. If you think in this way, you come back next lifetime, you have the lifetime guarantee. Liberation is the exact opposite. The mind eschews, it pushes away the notion of an individual and the individual's suffering or an individual's liberation. So long as the mind attaches to these apparent dualities of suffering and liberation, for instance, it is destined to regenerate the ignorant world of samsara. So long as people are walking around in this dream and buying into the dream continues. It is why there is the great vow to deliver all sentient beings. Until such sentient beings are delivered, the dream continues. And again, we understand that the delivery of sentient beings are illusory sentient beings. It's just the Buddha may think, now I can get a good epoch's sleep, night sleep. We don't see that all of these appearances are just a creation of the mind. Stop and listen to what I said. Rather than polishing a tile to make it a diamond, behold the diamond that cuts through all of this, cuts through all of the illusions. cuts through the attachments. We talk of great death. We were talking before of death. Now I talk about great death. And that scares us, as it should. Death should frighten us. Yet we're born again. Why do we want to be born again without awakening? To die and start again, to awaken, how many deaths will it take? The great death is an awakening that this person, this ego, this life and being is an illusion, is a dream. That there is no such thing as your ego or your identity. It's always changing in accordance with causes and conditions. You're sometimes a pauper, sometimes a king, sometimes a punisher, a thief, a jailer, an abuser, and equally, you can be a victim of all of them. So to what purpose do we do this? Let's start from the idea that what we call the Buddha is not a supreme being, at least as we in samsara can conceive. What we relate to as being the Buddha is just an appearance body, what they call Nirmanakaya. And the Nirmanakaya can take any form. The Nirmanakaya is something that is used by the Buddha mind to assist in breaking down the dream. In this way, if there was a people on Mars or Venus, the Buddha would take on the image of wherever the Buddha goes to. If it's in heaven, he would look like a heaven dweller. It's constantly changing, but we want to anthropomorphize and say the Buddha is this supreme being that did it. It's not in that way. Buddha is not a person, only in an appearance body, but that appearance body itself, in accordance with the laws of cause and conditions, will perish as well. But the mind never perishes. So we go back to the great death. It's a choice to separate out mind from the dream entanglements. I often talk to Michael about quantum mechanic entanglements, which are kind of interesting because there's a whole practice in quantum mechanics or quantum physics where people look at particles and realize that these particles, even they could be 1,000,000 miles away, can have an effect on another particle. That's if something happens here, this one would be affected. And in that way of looking at this entanglement, then you see all of this stuff where we see that everything is connected. Everything is entangled. The entanglement is because we connect to this world and believe that all of this is real. So the mind creates these entanglements, but it can easily uncreate it. But it doesn't go around and going poof. It's all disentangled because the mind by itself follows pratika samapada, causes and conditions never fail. That's why I say, if it was the Buddha as a supreme being, he could just have mercy on everybody at that moment and go, oh, you're all free. Rather than trying to go in to the dream to achieve the same purpose. It's not so easy in terms of that. So when we let go of the ego, then that's important. Because then the mind disentangles from all the samsaric appearances and ego. There's no ego. There being no ego, the whole illusory nature of the world collapses. Mind being immutable remains in its perfect clarity, but it only collapses for this portion of mind, not completely, because one comes out and as if they were watching a play on a stage and comes out and realizes there's a whole different world. And everybody who was watching that play believed that whatever was happening on that stage is real. But only for the one that got out is it clear. So that one will go back into the theater to tell everybody else that this is an illusion. This is not real. Why wouldn't they? Mind, nevertheless, escaping from the entanglements, is free to traverse and course through any appearances at will via the nirmana kaya powers, and in the world, donning a corporal body, a physical body, or a red meatball, it functions within samsara, but with a perfected anyatara samyak sambodhi, perfected wisdom. It's no longer called wisdom at that point. Mind is not tainted by the corruptions of the samsaric world, of the evils of greed, hatred, and ignorance. They do not influence a Buddha or a bodhisattva's behavior. This is how a bodhisattva or a Buddha act in this world. So this gives you a little bit of a chance to look at this and to, this idea that we call a right view, is actually using the true perception of the mind, not samsaric perception where everything is emanating from what we believe an egocentric viewpoint, rather that it sees everything in a state of equanimity as it is, and clearly sees what is arising, not something that we need to do or to placate the ego in any way. When the mind is devoid of those identities, it is free to function, free to move around. It knows. Imagine the mind free from this world and knowing that everything is created by the mind. How vast and infinite could that be? It's way beyond our ability to conceive of something like that. So that gives you food for thought. Thank you for listening. I hope you're listening sincerely. I really tried to give a sincere effort to try to in part demystify this right view practice, and I hope that it will give you a lot of food for thought later on. So thank you. I'll take questions. Okay, Robert.
Okay, well, thank you very much for today's lecture. Right in the beginning, you mentioned something. It's almost like I don't know what to say. You say rest in Rigpa.
Yes.
Rest in Rigpa.
Yeah, that's just the clarity of the mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, rest in clarity of the mind. When I look at the phrase of rest in clarity of mind, it is something just so quiet and so wonderful, but no, there's no but. It's almost like there's nothing else you need to fear, including death. When you rest there, you let go of everything. What is to fear? There is no fear. You just rest. Even the most fearful thought, death. And can you expand maybe a little more?
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
This is what I probably was moving a little bit quickly through that, but this is what we call great death. The great death is the death of attachment to the samsaric world. So this world ends for you as you see it to be something that is reality. Nevertheless, in accordance with cause and conditions, the corporal body continues on. The mind knows the difference. The world in that way is dead. It's dead because it's a dream. But nevertheless, there's functions to be done within the world to bring about the great death of others. And it sounds awful because it's like, oh, this is kind of like a James Jones type of thing where we drink poison Kool-Aid. No, it's not in that way. It's quite the opposite. It's a release of the ignorance. So that if somebody offered you poison Kool-Aid, you go, no, I don't want to die. Not that way. Great death is just simply applying this highest level of wisdom to the present moment, to the point where there's no longer anything that could be called wisdom. It's just application of mind without the ego. Not bad. So that's what that is. Okay. And there's a peace there, a great peace. If we try to cling to that peace, then we mess it up. Just let it be. And just when we're out of it, just return to it. That's all. Don't try to say, okay, because I've experienced this, I'm still like, if I fall and break my ankle, I'm going to be suffering. Well, that's just things that happen in this world. No, so you understand that. It doesn't mean that you have an inoculation of all adversities in this world. It just means that you can handle them. You see it that this is part of this world. Okay, good. Harry.
There we go. Hi, Gilbert. Thanks again. Wonderful talk. I just wanted to make a little bit of a plea for the middle way. So I was thinking, if I'm in a state of depression or I'm in a state of resentment, and I believe the illusions that are rising in my mind, I have a real potential to cause harm. But if I'm making coffee and toast, which are also, you could argue, are illusory, the potential for harm is a lot less. So I just wanted to suggest the use of the four right exertions, because before we get to the point that you're talking about, which is really, dispensing with wrong view and samsaric mind, I think it's maybe helpful for us to be really attuned to what's happening in the mind in terms of the kusala and akusala and the harmfulness or the beneficial nature of what we're actually engaging in with our minds. I want to see what you had to say about that.
And tell me, Harry, if you did that for your entire life, in just using that in and of itself, would that bring about a realization? Would you be guaranteed to have?
I don't know that it would be a guarantee, but I think that I would be getting rid of some of the baggage along the way. And I would be, I think what you're saying, your view is really the correct view, but I think it's, how you keep saying that we don't understand this thing. It's because all of these things are getting in our way, that our habitual tendencies are dragging us down, and we like being dragged down. That's the other unfortunate problem. So it's hard to escape from this the magnetism of our habitual tendencies. So that's just why I wanted to bring that up, the idea of using the four right exertions.
Yeah, you're giving sympathy to the devil, which is the ego, and you're giving it some solace and ground to stay. Where I'm trying to look at it and say the devil doesn't exist. So and I understand, and I completely understand your position, Harry. For the purpose of this lecture and looking at it, the reason that I'm saying it in this way is so that people begin to contemplate what mind is and begin to say, it's not this correction of things that we're doing. This is a second level of practice. But if we see things in the present moment clearly, then all of what you talked about for these 4 exertions will be perfectly reflected in our conduct naturally. It will be perfectly reflected without trying to abide by them or to hold on to them or to mimic them in some way or to play like we're a bodhisattva. Just simply staying in the present moment, being clear in the present moment, keeping the mind settled and keeping it clear is the expedient way. And that's, and I understand, yours is a very high level and eloquent way of presenting it, and saying, don't we need that? No, not really. If you do this right, with right view, it will be reflected in everything that you do. If you don't think you can do it and you want to do the 4 exertions, fine, but don't kid yourself into thinking that's going to give you some form of enlightenment, because there's no enlightenment. If we just keep our mind to mind, then it's fine. And I'm not doing this in a way, like, again, because what I'm trying to present here is mind. And say, why don't you consider this and let the people use their contemplation to do that, and then go, okay, well, where I thought the door was isn't necessarily there. Yes, people can still do all the things, the Eightfold Path, the 37 factors of enlightenment, the paramitas or whatever, but I guarantee you when they're practicing in the present moment, all of those things are apparent. Mm-hmm. They're all there. They're all there because the wisdom that's manifested from, I shouldn't say abiding, but from practicing right view in the present moment, it is mine. All of those things that are there are what we want to do to try to do it, but we're trying to, again, build that stairway to heaven, where I'm saying it isn't. You have to understand present moment is just this moment. There's no present moment attached to a linear taking of time in a illusory world. The present moment of the Buddha is not the present moment of a person in this world. The present moment is just, every moment's a present moment for the Buddha. Even if the Buddha is traversing and going into the past or the future, it's still the present moment. And so it's a different way of looking at it, so that we you want to have this crutch, but that crutch comes with a cost. And the cost is the ego is being perpetuated. Mm-hmm. That's the danger. Go ahead.
I'm on your side, Gilbert. I just was worried about people that might get discouraged because it's a big leap. It's the 100-foot pole you got to step off.
Well, it's the reason why they say, I present things too deep. But my thing is that this is where we start. And then if we can't get that, then we teach the people, put a pacifier in their mouth and teach them the 4 Noble Truths or whatever. But here, we're going right to it. And I believe all the people who are listening are capable of picking this. Thank you very much for presenting that viewpoint, because I wanted to actually highlight the difference with that, but thank you. Okay, Wei Shan.
Hi, Gilbert. Hi, everybody. You're asking me to translate immutable into Chinese and caught me by off guard, and I said unmoving, 不动. And there are people here mentioned it's never changing, 常. That's kind of a very interesting thing. Intrigued me something in me, because in Chinese, the ancient masters always refer to two qualities of the true mind. One is a ji. It means absolute stillness, unmoving, perish, or absolute silence. And the other one is chang. It means never change. To me, these two qualities, ji and chang, stillness and never change, are referring to two aspects. One is unmoving, is referring to the appearance, phenomena aspect, and never change is referencing more on the time. But I believe these are not what we conventionally think as something is unmoving, something is never changing. It's actually the opposite. It's the perish of appearance is the absolute stillness, and the perish of time is the never change. I like to make that statement, and I like for your advice and your suggestions. Thank you.
It is not. It is in your heart that you were able to articulate that. And then that's very, very important, because it was with your heart, you're able to say that. So it is correct. When we start using words, and to do that when you said it's unmoving, to me, I could see that from the sutras, and seeing it in many different masters talking about it that way. That works. It could be impermanence. It's the same thing, but it's not in the lexicon of the word of the samsaric world, but it is in the heart of the person that is realizing that. And that's what you did. So that's good. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, because what you're doing is you're articulating your understanding, which is a good, deep understanding of that, and a respect to try to see this, not because of what your understanding is, but hopefully that you do not lead people astray with what you're doing. Those who say, okay, well, it means this or that, it can mean both of them. So, like a well-known advisor, you're all right. Okay. All right. Sam, go ahead.
Hey, Gilbert, thank you for your lecture tonight. And you were right about your comment on mind work, about how this lecture would point to the true master, and how the master really can't be seen in appearances. So now I understand what you meant with Foyan being a mechanical puppet. But I thought about, you asked a question, and you asked me to contemplate it further, was it possible to have a subjectless master, or a master who is without subjects? And I kept thinking on it, and I wanted to share that one is a master who can show others to the master within themselves, or to their own connection to this master, or to this Buddha, or to this mind. Or one who dissolves, or helps to dissolve another's delusion of a master, especially the attachment to the external experience or perception of a master.
Yeah, I'll turn you a different way. Actually, you cannot call me a teacher, because I have no subjects to teach. Whether it's English or Sanskrit or history, no subjects. No, I have nothing to teach. But it's those kinds of things are things for you to examine, to look at it, and try to do it, and to explore it. When I say, does a master have subjects? Does a master, if we're talking about the true master being the Buddha, does the Buddha have subjects or not? No. So now we have a lot of highfalutin, very experienced practitioners here. And so can you answer that? And you say, does the Buddha have subjects to present to? And you have to be careful before you open your mouth, because then you have to say, okay, well, does that fly with the Diamond Sutra? And so it's an interesting thing. Or could the Buddha be a master? Master of what? So there it is. So in any case, yeah, it is just playing with these things and giving you a chance to look at them and use this contemplation, because it defies cogitation. If you start thinking about it, then it doesn't work. It is the contemplation, such as Wei Shan, where he's looking at this and contemplating, okay, what does this mean? And then articulating that. That's where we get there. And you know, you're off to a good start with all of this stuff, you know. So just stay that way, but don't get too excited, or I'll slap you back. Okay. So, all right, Tori.
Thank you, Gilbert, for today's talk. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the whole today's lecture correctly, is that any form, any experience, or even any concept or idea, as long as there's some kind of clinging to it, attached to it, then that means it'll validate ego. It'll validate existence that, oh, I'm real. If I'm real, then samsara is real. So that's why Nagarjuna does not say anything, just stay silent. I don't know if I'm correct.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is that was the point, is that even to this day, philosophers, historians, and scholars miss that. They mess up, and they're saying, oh, he was just using this device of old to present these kinds of arguments and negate the opponent's one. And they say, so he doesn't have to advance it. No, he doesn't advance it because to do so would blow his whole argument. Just like Vilamakritti, if the Vilamakritti opened his mouth about emptiness, it wouldn't be emptiness. It required a self-introspection, self from the self-nature of mind introspection, which is what I'm presenting to you all here to do this self-introspection. You already have this mind. You already have this self-nature. Use it. Use it. Don't use the ego. Don't use this linear thinking of processing something, but use it and go, and you get to the point where you go, aha. Okay. And then all of a sudden you get that. So what you have said is that you got to the point where you understand why he didn't say that, because it's looking from outside of samsara that you're able to see that. Because if you're in samsara and you present the arguments, it's a samsaric argument. But he's presenting an invitation to people to look beyond the samsaric realm, and that, which is what I've been doing. So that's good. Yeah, very good. I'm very happy with the contributions of people tonight. Anybody else? Michael, a late entry here.
Okay, thanks, Gilbert. I have a question regarding what you also mentioned last time already, that it only stops for you and not for others. So and also probably the understanding that the stream will always go on in some sense, because it's part of the two truths. I mean, you cannot only have the one side. And so I wonder how this would fit with the bodhisattva path of coming back through the vows. And if one comes back, will one have to go through a phase of dreaming until waking up sometime, or can one just come back totally outside, like having seen through the dream. So I like if you could answer based on these elements.
Another one with sympathy for the devil. It's interesting because you and these are natural questions, okay? They're natural questions. But if, let's say, last night you won a Wing Chun tournament and they gave you a statue, would you be able to show it to me? No, because it was in a dream, right? So going back to what Tori said is that all of that validity only happens in samsara as a dream. It's only, all of that all applies only to the dream. So the thing is that we cannot create a validity there to say that these sentient beings, they have a cogitation. That cogitation is illusory. Mind is pulling the strings on all of it. So when we do that, that again is that, like the Buddha Nature Treatise, that undercuts the validity of everything that's appearing, and including the self, because there's nothing to support it. Because when we see all of that is fundamentally a dream, it has no validity, true validity. That's the point that where she was getting to, that it's not there. There's no validity in the world that we could say that this is permanent. This is because everything is impermanent. Everything is a dream. So when we say these things, and I understand why you're saying it, but we don't have pity for Mara. Let me see. Hold on a second. I didn't get to get to this, but I'll get to it next week. But this is from Huineng and the Platform Sutra. The true thusness of the self-nature is the real Buddha. Perverse views and the three poisons are Mara. So the perverse views is that there's anybody there to be salvaged, to be saved. There's nobody there to be saved. That's Mara. That's why I said you're giving sympathy to the devil, because in your presentation, you're presupposing that there's this life and being, although albeit illusory, but still has this suffering. But we know from Mahayana practice, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. All of these things are fundamentally empty. So the practice of right view presents it from here rather than trying to give validity to anything there, because even try to save it from the devil is the devil. In terms of it, if that question is being presented within samsara. And so that's why it was mentioning this, in terms of this, and it says, in times of delusion, Mara is in the room. So when I was talking, Mara had left the house and Harry brought him back in, and then you polished him up and picked him up. So it says, in times of delusion, Mara is in the room. And when the right view prevails, then the Buddha is in the hall. And that's what I'm saying. When the right view prevails, then there's no place the Buddha's not. And this is how we approach things. So we see that from this way, in terms of it, that's why I was mentioning this soteriological ideas and epistemological ones of salvation. They cannot apply here, because they apply only if we're trying to save sentient beings, but those sentient beings are illusory sentient beings. So they cannot apply because they only exist within the dream. that dream is not separate from the Buddha. So there is an apparent reality there, but there's no immutability to it. The only immutability is that they're constantly changing. Okay. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but.
Thank you.
All right. You're a good sport. Thank you. But anyway, that's next week. I'll probably start with what I was saying, and you'll see what I mentioned is in applied. We apply it all the way through to the different sutras, and you'll see that it all fits together. This viewpoint then is not a viewpoint. It is just simply resting the mind in mind. That's the way we are. If we rest the mind in mind, all the consciousness and everything that come up, we understand that that's mind too. But it's transitory, constantly changing. We don't have to push it out. We just have to illuminate it and understand that's mine. It arises because of habitual patterns, and little by little, those habitual patterns break down, and the mind is just simply there, perfectly clear. Okay.
There's some questions in the chat.
Okay.
Suzanne and Christoph have been talking about whether time is only linear in samsara. Is time linear? Is it only in samsara?
Well, time is only linear in samsara. Time is only relevant in samsara, or anything where there's appearances, because we don't know, we could have an alternate universe that has different time frames, and so when we say linear, you could say that to the Buddha does not have a time. That's why you see in the statues, he doesn't have a wristwatch on, because every moment is Buddha time. Okay. Sounds like a commercial for Bud time, but every moment is in that way. Okay. So they say linear time. Is it time linear? And for who? So all of these things, I was kind of watching them as they were popping up, but the thing is that was one of Nagarjuna's main refutations and negations is the existence of time. And so you can go and I think it's in the Mula Karikatika, something like that you probably know the proper name, Santa.
Mula Madhyamaka Karika.
You see, that's what I said. So I had to say it, butcher it, so at least you knew what I was talking about, and where there's a refutations of time and space and everything, which is absolutely amazing in terms of that. And actually, I did this all backwards because that's where I started when I first started practicing, was reading Nagarjuna and going like, huh? And then, but sincerely reading it, and all of a sudden, poof, it made a real big change. So yeah, time, I think you need to kind of look at that and say, all right, let's play with that. Because like I say, when I give my blessings to everybody, I bless the people that I will come to know in the future. And I bless the people that have already come in the past and have suffered. But I figured if I bless them with a Buddha blessing, then they probably would have reaped that and maybe mitigated some of their suffering, in the past. Although it would not eliminate all of it, it might eliminate some of it, or it could change things. It's very interesting in terms of how we look at that. Everything's created by the mind. Why not? So if time was only linear, that could not happen. And where I got that from was from the Dipankara Buddha predicting in the Diamond Sutra that the Buddha would be, Shakyamuni would be a Buddha in another lifetime or in a coming lifetime. And how would he know that? Because he knew that because it already is. So it's interesting. So that would not be, we could say it like linear time. Anyway, it gives you a lot to think about. Okay. Anything else? No? All right. Plenty to talk about today, plenty to practice and think about. And what I'd invite you to do is pick up a sutra and read it and see if it doesn't fit with what I'm talking about today. Any sutra, whatever sutra it is, just say, I want to see this, and you will see it. You just open up the book and you just go, oh my gosh, that's what Gilbert was talking about. You could do the Lanka, the Vatamsaka Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. You'll find references to what I'm talking about in there. Because this is the right view. Okay. All right. We'll continue on next week. Again, this was a little bit kind of throwing you into the deep end, but I gave you water wings to kind of hold on a little bit till the very end. And I had to strip them off of Harry and Michael. I kid you guys, but thank you very much for your questions. They're very good.